Hi, everyone. Jolly Knott from England has joined me to talk about Ingress charts for God knows whichever countries we are going to talk about because we have no plans. Thanks, Jolly, for joining.
Thanks for having me, Ashwin.
I quickly share the screen, and so the first thing that I want to mention is we are going to use the Planet Dance program, which is a full-time free program for astrologers at all levels. And Jean Kremers from Netherlands and Ed from UK have kind of put their blood into this and developed something great and amazing for astrologers to work with. And I'm not going to kind of get into all these things, but I think we are going to look at the mundane module, which is primarily a medieval setup. And you'll see what we are getting into once we start working with the charts. Uh, then here comes Planet Dance.
Okay.
So, Jolly, can you see the screen properly, or is something hiding your view?
No, I can see it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay. So this is the Aries Ingress chart, tropical zodiac, which is very unlike me, uh, set to Washington, D.C. So this is the Aries Ingress chart. So we are going to talk about, initially we are going to talk about the nature and quality of uh, the next year for the United States of America. Um, so Jolly, let's not get into a very linear mode. Let's just talk about whatever we see, and straight away the I mean in any ingress chart, it's a rule that when any fixed sign is rising, the ingress is valid for the entire year. And
Mhm.
if a mutable sign is rising, the chart that we cast for the spring equinox is valid for 6 months, and we have to cast another chart for autumn equinox. And
Mhm.
then if the rising is mutable, sorry, a cardinal, we just have to
Cardinal.
keep
Yeah.
changing for
Yeah.
every cardinal ingress, which is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So since we have a fixed rising, which is Scorpio, we don't have to kind of cast another chart. So this chart will be very, very applicable and telling for the entire year. Um, Jolly, do you want to start about the rising sign and then move on? Like,
Well,
or
yeah, I mean, this is so interesting to me because we've got the ascendant in Scorpio ruled by Mars in the fourth house in the terms of Saturn. Right away, I'm thinking about the choice that is upcoming in the presidential election
yeah,
later this year. I mean, I that to me seems to be a pretty clear signature there. And I think it's really interesting that we have the moon in Leo in the
mm,
terms of Jupiter in the 10th house.
yeah.
Ooh, it to me, I know we've got two men that are essentially competing, but right away, that makes me think that there's a woman somehow in the picture in a very big way.
Yeah.
Do you not think that, Ashwin?
I do think that, but I also think Leo is not a female sign, so there is that element, and the term ruler is also male. So although there is a female element involved, I think we have to just look further in terms of assessing the 10th ruler, in this case Sun. So basically, the medieval astrologers say that the 10th ruler is the 10th house, and the 10th ruler are indicative of the government, um, like the condition of the king. So we assess the condition of the king, uh,
Mm,
looking at the ruler of the 10th house. Sun is the natural significator of the government and administration, and also the king. But
mm,
for specific ingress charts, it's always important to look at the 10th ruler, and also the 10th house, the planets that are placed in the 10th house. So the first step that uh, the medieval astrologers say is that identify the planet that is victor. So I'll just give a quick tip. Like a planet that is a candidate for victor needs to hold domicile strength in either of the angular houses, that is 1, 4, 7, 10. And then comes the 11th house and the 5th house. And they also talk about the third and the ninth house, but I don't really use the third and the ninth house as a candidate for victor because they're cadent. So here we see that none of the planets hold domicile strength in the angles. Jupiter is in detriment, but Jupiter is also uh, it's in its own terms. So, which is a very, I mean, it is an essential dignity essentially. So Jupiter is the victor of this chart. So in this chart, in the wheel, the very, very good thing about planet dance is that it gives a very, very almost close, authentic victor of the chart that we can rely upon. So in this case, Jupiter is in an angular house in the terms of, I mean, in its own terms in Taurus,
In its own
although it
terms, yeah.
is not a very friendly sign for Jupiter. So we see that Jupiter is the victor of the chart. So Jupiter has a very, very important say in this chart. So maybe we can just try and analyze Jupiter's conditions, and then try to relate it to the condition of like the king. So king is basically, in this case, we have to deal with the sun, and we also have to talk about the moon because moon is placed in the 10th house of the king itself. So first thing is Jupiter in its own terms. So Jupiter is always dealing with expansion, and in mundane astrology, 7th house is direct enemies. So straight away we know that there is growing direct opposition or enemies for the US, which has been the political landscape as well. Like especially given the current scenario, where people have taken different positions, I think majority of them have been kind of unhappy with the various decisions that have been in place by United States of America. So for me, the most striking thing at this point immediately is the aspect that Jupiter casts to the MC and also the moon in the 10th house. And yeah, obviously Sun is almost in aversion to Jupiter, so there is nothing much to talk about.
Mm.
So did you have something to talk about Jupiter and moon, Jolly?
I I'm just noticing as you said that obviously the sun is an aversion to Jupiter.
Yeah,
Uh, and I know this is straying a little bit off of what we're talking about, but since I'm currently focusing on the lot of fortune, I'm also
yeah,
noticing that the
brilliant.
moon is the ruler of the lot of fortune and is also averse. But
Mm,
we are seeing a trine between the sun and the moon. So that's interesting for me because the moon
yes,
is also the people, isn't it?
yes, 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 sure. And the sun is government,
Mm.
administration. So, uh, like obviously, Aries Ingress sun is going to be in very early degrees of zero Aries.
Right. Zero,
So
zero Aries, yeah.
it's a little it's a shaky moment for us because since the sun is the 10th ruler, uh, uh, it's a little challenging for us to kind of assess whether there will be a change in the king, or whether there will be the same king. So I think the sun is obviously changing signs. If we, I mean, it's a very explicitly horary concept where we are looking at sun changing signs or a planet
Mm.
that is changing signs.
Mm.
But obviously sun is very early in the degree, and the moon is also very early in Leo.
Yeah.
So the sun is basically receiving the moon um, in Leo. So it's almost like people are kind of trying to look for a people are very anxious, and also there is this welcoming idea of this election. The people of America are actually welcoming the election of I mean, whether or not they vote for Biden or Trump, but I think most of the people are looking forward to the election. uh, so so for me, moon is a fast moving planet, and
Mm.
the moon is in a fixed sign, but sun is cadent, although it is exalted. Sun is
Mm.
cadent in the 6th house. So it kind of gives me an impression that there is a decline. in the current government. So probably there is a change, or if there is not a change in the government, maybe there is a change of a president from the same party. But I get a feeling like that maybe we get to see a change, uh, major shift in America by this election.
I would agree with you. I mean, the other thing that's also catching my eye is the fact that the domicile ruler, Mars, is in the fourth house and
Yeah.
in an overcoming square to Jupiter.
Yeah, that's another point. Like, and we have to keep in mind that Jupiter is Victor. So, um, like Masha Allah says that identify which planet does Jupiter form an aspect with. So in this case, uh, I mean, I don't think there is any direct aspect that Jupiter is making, but many planets are kind of applying to Jupiter. So, uh, but still, Jupiter is aspected by Mars, which is a far off square. And but I also think we need to kind of take this aspect into consideration, because mashallah says find out which malefic is aspecting Jupiter or the Victor, and see from where the aspect is happening. So in this case, from the fourth house. So fourth house is home. So the problem is within the home. Like the
Mm.
entire America is going to have problems from within their own country. Fourth house is the homeland, and Mars is already in the fourth house. People are, I mean, Mars in fourth house indicates agitation, and kind of riotic, rebellious mindset in many ways. So I get a feeling that there is a lot brewing behind the scenes, but that is also within their own country. So they don't need to get problems from outside, but a lot is kind of happening within America itself. And yeah, and Mars is also aspecting the MC, so it kind
Yeah.
of uh, it shouts loudly.
Yes. Yes. I think I agree with you completely. It's been interesting to me on Twitter X to see the number of commentators and analysts and pundits using terms like civil war in the context of current US politics, in the context of what's going on in terms of the direction of the population's policy preferences and whatnot. It's interesting. I mean, I'm just very sensitive to it because
Yeah,
obviously we've got Uranus about to head into Gemini. And the
yeah,
last time Uranus was in Gemini in
war.
the US chart, it was during a civil war. So
Yeah, right.
obviously there are plenty of people who are very concerned about
Right.
that, and it seems to be reflected in the wider discourse. So there's no getting around that, and I think this chart shows that.
Yeah. But for me, civil war, the idea of civil war, I don't use Uranus in my practice, so I'm very, very, ignorant about that. So it's a limitation. But uh, from what I see from a traditional perspective, civil war is a little unlikely because Mars is staying alone in the fourth house, and it doesn't have any hard aspect with the nodes and also Saturn. So the fourth house is largely unaffected except for the presence of Mars.
Mm.
So on the other hand, Saturn is placed in the fifth house with the benefic
Yes.
Venus. So
Yes.
it should count in a way, although like um, Venus rules the seventh house of enemies, which brings in the quotient, like the enemy's quotient. But I think I get a feeling that the problems are very much internal as well, as much as they have issues from outside their country. So I think whatever you said in terms of Uranus in Gemini and kind of having this relationship with Mars at some point is also very, very interesting to kind of to understand the dynamics of the internal politics of the United States of America. So which kind of again indicates some shift uh, in the existing landscape.
or an eruption of what is already there. I mean, even if it's not a civil war in terms of soldiers fighting each other, for example, just the fact that you have such polarization and that
Yes.
there is a civil war of sorts in the discourse, which,
Yes.
certainly Mars in an air sign is going to speak to that.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's really big. One thing that I think is also interesting is this idea of testimony and aspects. I mean, obviously you've got both Venus and Saturn also in an overcoming sextile to Jupiter.
Yeah.
However, Jupiter is really separating from Saturn, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
it's almost like, okay, there is some Saturnian testimony taken in, but then it's discounted because Jupiter flies away in a sense.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, we've got Venus, and Venus will perfect its sextile to
Jupiter.
Jupiter. So that makes me think there is an opportunity to
Resurrect
somehow,
these confusions. Yeah. Or maybe
well,
resolve the confusions.
exactly. There is an opportunity here to also grow some diplomacy and
Yes.
to expand on the diplomatic front efforts to smooth things over.
Right. When we, yeah, Venus and diplomacy, that's a very, very good point. And just to quickly point out, like I mean, across all the charts, we'll have the moon, Mars and Saturn, peregrine, uh, like two malefics, peregrine, good sign. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, let's see that as a good sign. But moon in the 10th house, you know, peregrine is a little concerning for me. Like it almost kind of suggests that there is nowhere to go. Like, and given the current scenario, I find it very unethical to kind of already predict whether Biden or a Trump will be winning the elections, because still we don't have the final announcement of who are going to contest the elections.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
but I think somehow moon is indicative of this unending confused scenario, as far as the election is concerned. So maybe this scenario will stretch a little more even after maybe a month or two, because by this time usually the candidates are announced, if I'm not wrong. So it still stretches beyond, and we have to
Beyond,
wait and
yeah.
watch what really happens. So I see moon as also an element of uh, the stirrer of confusion, like
And fluctuation as well.
yes,
I mean,
yes,
I think it's interesting because if we consider, okay, so the moon's domicile is the ninth house
yes,
and its exaltation is the seventh house, then we can almost say that if the moon is considered to be importing the topics of both those
yeah,
places, there is a continuing fluctuation in who is the enemy.
yes, yes,
Perceiving the enemy, understanding the enemy, engaging with the enemy. I mean, that's there by a square. And then also the ninth house, this idea of what are the higher beliefs? What is the philosophy? What are the laws that we are working with?
yeah,
And certainly over the last few years, we've seen a massive fluctuation, not the least of which was, for example, the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
yeah,
So I think this is maybe painting a picture of that continuing this year.
yeah. So I yeah, I think I agree with you. Like it's brilliant. Like the way you put in the ninth house, sorry, the seventh house and the ninth house significations, it's amazing. So and importantly, moon is also the hour ruler. So
Yes.
and
Yeah.
Mars is the day ruler. So that has to count as well. So wherein one place in the fourth house is indicative of the you know the agitation or the anger that people have,
Mm.
and on the other hand, it's also indicative of whatever you just pointed out very eloquently. So yeah, it's a very very interesting chart as far as America is concerned.
Mm.
Uh, like uh, like before we move on, like did you have something else, Jolly? Like
I mean, I think I'm really interested in the fact that we've got that Venus Saturn conjunction in the
yes,
fifth house.
yes,
And I'm trying to make sense of it. I'm sure there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I know that Saturn in Pisces is meant to be contributing to this idea of the corruption of water,
yeah,
waterways, water. We certainly are seeing that in the UK, but this is a US
absolutely,
chart. So,
uh,
but then, there is that benefic there. I mean, and technically this is a night chart, if you will. So
yeah,
Venus is
greater benefit.
the greater benefic for this chart. So yeah, I just think that's a really interesting place for Venus to be. And to a certain extent, I might be wrong. It's not quite a contra Antisha, is it, with Mercury?
Yeah, you want to see the contra Antisha because I don't work with Antisha. Yeah, it is.
A little bit off.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
exact, but
Not
yeah,
exact. Not exact. But again, it makes me wonder if there is either, is it emotional volatility, which, certainly the Scorpio ascendant with Mars in the fourth house suggests, but or is there again an opportunity to engage in some kind of quenching of fiery discourse, because we've got an exalted Venus,
right,
in her house of joy. So I just think I appreciate it's not quite a contrantitia, but because it's fairly close within a couple of degrees, I feel like there's something there, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So I guess I'll just have to leave that for now. But I think there is something potentially there that could come out as the year progresses.
right. But something interesting that I found here is that Venus, although it's a greater benefic, it rules the seventh house of opposition. So there is we can kind of consider this as a strong opposing force that's kind of going on, um, which is very very uh, visceral in terms of what we are seeing. There are two sides, and it's almost like we're unable to kind of figure out which team is kind of gaining the upper hand. Like while it seems like Trump was gaining upper hand, sometimes it seems like he's derailing. But one constant condition is that Biden's or Democratic Party's derailment. But Trump is kind of fluctuating. So probably Saturn's conjunction with Venus is causing that little uh, up and down scenario. But I think there is a lot of element of grit involved in the opposition. And I don't mean to even say that Trump is gritty or Biden is gritty, but somehow uh, uh, and for me, I always look at the external forces. For seventh house, it's always external. So maybe the opposing elements of the United States of America at this point are very very determined and gritty, where things are not really going well because of that internally, which we already know. So but I
Mm.
think we should see, I mean, we should also see Venus as an opposing force, since it rules the seventh house, and it's quite strong in the fifth house, exalted with
Well,
Saturn.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I just realized, of course, Saturn is in contra Antisha with Mercury.
Mercury,
That's
Mercury.
a lot closer. And you've got the North Node there. So, if we take Saturn to be deception, then it feels like there's a lot of, perhaps this is a year of, and the North Node is the hungry ghost, it's increase. Then it's almost like we have an increase in propaganda, in
Yeah,
some type of dissembling discourse throughout the year. In other words, the words we hear are not quite what they seem.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's a brilliant point, and one of the the whatever you said is kind of attested by Mercury's placement in Aries, and Mercury is in its own bounds, but
Mm,
it's
mm,
with the North Node Rahu, and Rahu is also it's a bigger deception. So while Saturn is deception, Rahu is bigger deception, and
increase, yeah.
it's like there is always this manipulation and narrative building and all those things. So
Mm,
Mercury is communication. So whatever news or whatever communication that we receive might not necessarily be the one that we should believe or trust. And it's good that we got this chance to talk about the nodes, because we never kind of went into that. So yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
You know,
So
I think it is really telling that the nodal axis is falling in the 6th, 12th
yes,
axis or
yeah,
houses.
mm,
Um, one other small point, I'm just noticing, obviously the ascendant is falling in Mercury's terms.
yeah,
I think potentially the lot of fortune is falling in Mercury's terms, and then you have Mercury in Mercury's terms. So
yeah,
there does seem to be this emphasis on um contests, trading,
yeah.
on legal battles.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
sixth house legal battles.
And then you bring and then pulling in that 6th, 12th. Yeah. So I yeah, there's a lot. There is actually it's deceptive, isn't it? There's a lot going on here under the
You
surface.
know how interesting it is that the ruler of the 10th house, that is indicative of king, is getting into the sixth house, like,
Yeah,
which is very, very interesting. Sixth house is not conspiracies. I would associate the 12th house with conspiracies, but
I agree.
sixth house is probably the legal battles and the unexpected hurdles that we might face almost at a very daily level in terms of political landscape or whatever it may be. But either way, it seems to be an interesting year,
Yes, I
to say the
agree.
least.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, as you pointed out, a lot of people are perhaps looking forward to change, just change it already. I know that's certainly the case here in the UK. So I
Yeah,
think that it will be really interesting to see exactly how all of this unfolds.
great. So I think we have spent enough time for America. So let's now go to, I think the first initial plan was to unleash the elephant in the room. Uh, but let's do that now. I don't know. Gaza. It doesn't come up. Yeah. Um, yeah. Uh, okay. So Pisces
Wow.
rising, our ruler, Victor, everything is Venus, and the day ruler is Mercury, and the 10th ruler, the indicator of king, is Jupiter, and
Mm,
it's cadent straight away.
yeah, yeah.
So, but how interesting is this, Jolly? Like, because we have the eighth ruler here, Venus, which is exalted in the first house, with Saturn, which kind of shifts the entire dynamics. Like I mean, we can argue on the one hand that Venus is um, Venus is a benefic, and in fact, the greater benefic here as well. And Venus is exalted, so maybe the situation should improve. But again, I don't know whether it is my Jyotish background or something, but I always look at this, the eighth house factor, which is death and destruction, um, like, or big time issues, which kind of seemingly is, at least not resolvable in near future. And
Mm,
Saturn in the first house along with Venus kind of indicates, and Saturn is peregrine. So it kind of affirms the problems that the land, Israel or Palestine, whatever it may be. So I think I like to see it as a unified place, because there is not much change. Not that Israel and Palestine are the same, and I don't even want to get into that. But astrologically, I don't think we will even have change in our ruler. So it makes sense to kind of look at Israel and Palestine as a unified territory from an astrological perspective, because both these territories are anyway involved in this war. And
Mm.
Mars in the 12th house, in Saturn's bounds,
Mm.
for me it kind of still it indicates that there is more loss that's still coming up. So
Well, I was going to say, the ascendant ruler's lord, Jupiter in the third house, also being the 10th house ruler, to me it feels like aid or help that is too little too late. It's in a cadent house,
yeah,
it's coming, it's declining from the angle. It is not as powerful as it should be. Do you know what I mean? It really feels like
yeah,
there is aid, but it's just not enough to really make
yeah,
a dent.
yeah. But I think there is this mutual reception which we should have spoke in the US chart as well, between Jupiter and Venus.
Hmm.
But anyway, like, uh I think we have to kind of wait and watch in terms of
Hmm.
what it happens with. But again, Mashallah says that we need to identify
Hmm.
if the victor, which is Venus, is making any configuration with the ruler of the 10th house. So in this case, we have a sextile between Jupiter and Venus, and there is mutual reception. So I mean, it is a reasonably positive condition, but maybe it also suggests that the all this happens after a major loss that everyone has swallowed. So uh, it doesn't matter. Like, it almost is like this mutual reception doesn't matter. How does it? Like, if we look at a nativity, how good is it going to be, the mutual reception between the eighth ruler and the sixth ruler or something like that? So
Yeah.
probably it is indicating trouble in terms of whatever we are seeing in this chart, especially given that Mars is placed in the 10th house. Mars is the ruler of the ninth house. So the ruler of the ninth house, which kind of indicates diplomacy, is kind of hidden in the 10th house, basically, in the
Hidden in
language of
the 12th house,
Jyotish. Yeah,
right?
sorry, 12th house.
12th house. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, so that is another um, you know little bit of a shadowish thing that we need to deal with,
Yeah.
which doesn't look good
No,
as,
no,
as
it
much as we
doesn't.
would like for this chart. So, and Sun is obviously in the first house. So, I mean, in the second house, getting into the second house.
But yeah, Saturn is the malefic out of sect, right? So it's
Yes,
going to cause
sure.
the most damage.
Yeah.
And as you said, it becomes nullified with being conjunct Venus. Like, not nullified, but what I'm saying is it's almost like any good is canceled out
Yes.
by the fact that the malefic is there. So yeah.
Yeah, and let's not forget Saturn rules the 12th house. So, apart from the fact that it rules the 11th house, Saturn rules the 12th house, and it's
Yeah.
placed in the first house, which indicates loss for the nation. So, 12th house is loss. So, and Mars, let's not talk about Mars again. But anyway, second house, Rahu and Mercury, indicating major turbulence in economy. And seventh ruler, Mercury, the ruler of opposition, is placed in the I mean, ruler of opposing parties is placed in the second house with Rahu. Mercury is in its own terms, but again, Rahu in the second house indicates damage to the economy, and it's already done, but still it indicates further derailment of economy. And generally, Jyotish uh, texts say that for any mutable sign, seventh ruler is the killer. So Mercury with Rahu amplifies um, maybe tragic elements in in the region that we're talking about.
Mm.
But let's just hope we are wrong.
Yeah, I think most people would like to see the conflict come to an end,
Absolutely.
no matter which side you support. So
Yeah.
this is, I think, what is uppermost for in the minds of most people. However, it is what it is, and certainly the chart is not necessarily indicating completion anytime
Yeah.
soon,
Uh,
unfortunately. So
yes. But another thing is like we have to cast another chart for this because we have
right, because
mutable
it's
rising.
immutable. It's immutable
Yeah, it's
rising.
it's a mutable rising. So in and one more thing is like moon. The moon is placed in the sixth house,
Mm,
and moon rules the fifth house, and it's placed in the sixth house. Fifth house is the credit that the land has earned in terms of money or reputation.
mhm,
But and the moon is placed in the sixth house. On the one hand, moon indicates people, but
mhm,
on the other hand, uh, the moon also is responsible to show us the quality of the credits that the nation has. So all the reserves are depleting. That's what we see here. And resources are kind of fastly depleting because of, and which is indicated by the moon, obviously. And
mm.
second house is also immediate resources that we have. And Rahu is placed in the second house with its ruler Mars in the 12th house. So there is no gain from any of this. Like,
No.
uh, like nothing to gain here, and there is a lot of challenges that the second house, the first house, and the 12th house indicate here, and moon is also in a very very precarious position. So again, it looks like, so the only hope is the mutual reception between Venus and Jupiter, which we hope should work. But maybe we have to cast another chart after 3 months, and maybe situation will change after 3 months. So, and probably philosophically or spiritually, maybe the situation is changing, and that is why we have the mutable rising. So
That makes sense. That it's a situation that's in transition.
yeah,
And, again, I'm just noticing, obviously, I think I've already said this, but, the first house ruler and the 10th house ruler being in a cadent house,
yes,
it is a benefic, so that's great, but it's in a cadent house. So it
yeah,
just simply doesn't have the power it needs
yes.
to be more than it is.
Yeah, yeah, that is the challenge, I think. So I think, sorry, I mentioned 3 months, but I think it's 6 months. The chart
6 months,
changes
yeah.
after 6 months for Libra
Yeah.
Ingress. So, like, I don't know, we can go on and on, but maybe, uh,
I think we've covered this one.
yeah, yeah. So, what other place comes to your mind, Joel? I think Germany, because of it's
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. I think, well, Germany, the UK, Argentina are all
I
places that I
like
think.
Argentina. Oh, Germany is, I mean, situation is quickly changing. 3 months,
Mhm.
cardinal rising.
Yeah, look at that. Wow.
Yeah.
And Mercury, wow, Mercury is the victor of the chart. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes. And Mercury is Victor, Mars is the hour ruler, and day ruler is Mercury as well, obviously. So, Mercury in its own terms in Aries becomes the victor, but uh, I mean, it goes on to say that um, uh, the country is kind of illusioned by something that they should actually not be, because
Mm,
Rahu's illusion, they're kind of finding themselves amidst this crisis where they don't understand which way they need to go. Um, so that is one of the problems as far as Germany is concerned.
mhm,
And German economy has fallen by and far, especially since COVID. But since Russia and Ukraine war began, Germany's economy, I mean, entire Europe's economy is in scramble. But Germany has really faced some major challenges because of their economic downheaval. And Mars in the second house um, indicates more of that. So I don't see the situation changing anytime soon. So, and Mars in the second house also indicates spending for weapons.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
and then interestingly, I'm noticing Jupiter in Taurus in the fifth house. It's post ascensional. I mean, it's rising up to the angle. So for me, that also potentially shows, for example, the recent farmers' protests across Europe and how the
Yeah.
farmers will
Earth.
continue to hold perhaps the upper hand in
Yeah. Yeah.
forcing change. I just think that's fascinating.
And it's very, very interesting if you see moon farmers, and moon is kind of squaring Jupiter, although it's a whole sign square. There's this element that is very, very descriptive of what you pointed out. um and fifth house, as we already spoke about, it's the reserves bank account
Yeah.
that the nation has generated, accumulated for a very long time. uh, we can see that the ruler of the fifth house is strong in cadent house, which indicates decline. So their reserves are declining very
Hmm.
quickly, and Saturn indicates drying up of uh, resources. So yeah, I think it's the, for Germany. I see the economy, and also the tension of war. Like Russia
Hmm.
is kind of directly or indirectly threatening Germany just because of this leakage and other news. I mean, I'm sure people have seen. So the second house, fourth house is people and domestic well-being of people, but second house also at some level indicates the immediate necessities and whatever people need. And Mars in the second house indicates some nervousness and also agony to some level.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And doesn't it reflect farmers agitation or protest as well, in a way, not
It
completely,
would
but
because it this their march on Brussels recently, for
yes.
example,
Oh yeah.
was that right they in ultimately the EU bureaucracy had to concede on the back of those massive protests. So it's interesting to me. Absolutely, I think that Mars in the second house is indicating the unrest
Yeah.
that is causing separation, drain on the resources.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
Germany and
yeah,
France are the biggest contributors, right, to the EU
sure.
budget. So, yeah.
Yes, yes. And the 10th ruler Venus is exalted. So uh, maybe the king is exalted. I mean, it shows a strong king, like, but a strong king in decline because of
Yeah.
the Caden factor. Um, and the fourth house, 410 nodal axis. Ketu in the 10th house is again detachment. Probably the king is feeling detached, or maybe a resignation, or something like that. I mean, the thoughts of it, not necessarily
Acting on
handing.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
but surely feeling detached and absolutely overwhelmed by the position, because Saturn indicates pressure, like unending pressure that is keeping on piling up. So Venus, the 10th ruler, is
Is trying
at,
to,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, hold it
Saturn
at
is
bay.
constantly, and Saturn is peregrine. So night chart, Saturn is malefic. So sorry. And
Well, I
but
mean, again, this speaks to the far right rallies that have been happening up and down Germany, right?
yeah, but Saturn is the ruler of the rising sign. So, and
Yes.
yeah, so
Yes.
so
As well.
maybe, yes, as well. So and the ruler of the rising sign is in third house, Cadent, which indicates that they need a lot more effort and courage to kind of move all these things forward from where it is at this point.
Yeah.
So, and I think it also is indicative of the fact that Germany is in a slow decline. So there was a very funny news recently saying that Japan has lost its uh, position as the third major contributor to global GDP, like largest economy. Sorry, uh, but it's not because of the economic prowess or progress of Germany, but it's because Japan has been hit by a major recession as well. Uh, so it's like, I mean, Germany has not taken that position because of their progress, but it's because some other country has fallen faster than Germany.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah, but
that's a very
still,
good point.
yeah, but Germany is certainly in decline, which is very, very unfortunate because it's you know as it is. I mean, my friend Tanya Daniels says a phrase, but I forgot about. But it's the cash cow of Europe. So
It is. And interestingly, if you look at the eighth house of shared resources, you've got the moon in there. And yes,
yeah,
it's a fixed sign, but the moon is indicating fluctuation. So
yes. And a good thing is that the seventh house indicating opposing enemies is placed in the eighth house. So I don't know if we should see that as a weak scenario of the enemies. Obviously, uh, like practically speaking, Russia is not going to come and attack Germany anytime soon. It's out of question. But the threat will always be there. So although it doesn't look
mm,
like, because of seventh ruler in the eighth house, it doesn't look like there's going to be a strong force that is coming out, but there is going to be this kind of burden. Oh, will it? Because eighth house moon
the
indicates
worry,
burden. Yeah,
yes,
worry.
yes,
So it
100%.
yeah, it always comes up from time to time. So yeah, and Jolly, a lot of fortune in the ninth house, and I think it won't change much. But I think if you wanted to say something,
No, I was just noticing that. And again, this time the lot of fortune is ruled by that Mercury, who's the victor of the chart. So there's this, I think, underlying feeling potentially that, potentially we're thinking about how the fortunes of Germany will depend on the mercurial properties of, the idea of what they can do with trade, what they can do with, within a legal framework, what they can do
yeah,
in terms of being competitive, raising their productivity, for example. I just think that there's a potential tie in there.
sure. Uh, did we miss out on something? Like, I mean, obviously we can't talk about everything. We didn't set out to do that, but maybe something important, like something that
Well, like you said, it's just a quick fresh take. I mean, we
yes,
can see the MC is also
in
ruled
the
by that
11th
Jupiter.
house, which is an interesting thing. And Jupiter is MC has moved into the 12th house.
It's moved, yeah. And so I think that is interesting because it's almost, to me, it's almost like the visibility and the fate of the visibility. I mean, again, it's a cardinal chart, so you have to cast another chart.
Yes, yes.
But certainly for the next 6 months, it
Three
seems
months.
to be in the hands of, well, or the visibility comes from that built up credit, as you said,
Yes.
that Germany is carrying, but how long is that credit going to hold for?
Depleting very soon. So the tagline for Germany is depleting very soon.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
let's move on. So one of the important things that I wanted to point out in terms of assessing ingress charts for regions that are very close by is to see if the hour ruler changes. So
Right,
that will
right.
be very, very crucial, because sometimes some astrologers tend to kind of just look at the rising, but from a traditional perspective, I think it's important to look at the hour ruler. And sometimes we can notice even the terms shifting, but hour ruler is something that we have to focus on.
When
Uh,
we look at the hour ruler, though,
yeah,
Ashwin, like I can understand what the victor of the chart is, but how what kind of flavor is the hour rule? Is the hour ruler giving us an overall flavor? Because, you know, this is a a Capricorn rising chart, and Mars is the exaltation ruler of
yeah,
Capricorn.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what's the best way to think of or perceive the hour ruler?
Because so the first point that we need to always look at a chart is the victor. So I always go for the victor. But if you, for regions that are close by, the only difference that we see is the hour ruler. So we have to see which house and uh, you know in which house, I mean, the lordships of the hour ruler, and also the house in which the hour ruler is placed. And we have to apply the same logic as we do it
Right.
for Victor. So that,
Okay.
for example, if Germany's hour ruler is Mars, but if Italy's hour ruler turns out to be Mercury or something like that, so we have to look at Mercury more closely and see uh, how, which aspects, I mean, which malefics aspect Mercury, to understand from which region they'll have problems. Region in the sense, whether if it is the fifth house, the problems will come because of the depleting resources, and if it is the fourth house, the problem will come from within. So
Yeah.
if it is the
Yeah.
seventh house, it comes from the enemies. So
Yeah.
find out the hour ruler and see which malefic aspects the hour ruler. Apply the same logic that you see for Victor. So it
Okay. Got
it
it.
helps you differentiate for different regions.
That makes sense. And certainly again in this case we can see that the hour ruler is in the second house. So this is talking about
More focus on
literally,
economy.
yeah, but then also, yeah, not just the fracturing of the economy, let's say, but also this idea of armaments and arms
Yeah, yeah.
and how that's, yeah, unfortunately, in some ways we could say something that is certainly challenging. I mean, it's in opposition to the moon, which if you could say were the people, the general public isn't necessarily benefiting from
Yeah.
countries selling arms, are they? So
Yeah,
anyway.
obviously. Yeah. Moon is placed in the eighth house. It answers everything about people and their burden. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
So let's quickly jump on to another. Um,
Were we going to look at Argentina? Did you want to have a quick look at Argentina
yeah, I love to look at Argentina's chart because I wrote an article on Argentina's change of government
in
not
the
many months
APAI? Yeah.
ago. Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, Buenos Aires. So let's see what Javier Milei is doing. Oh, he's very strong.
Oh,
See,
wow.
Capricorn rising, but you see the our ruler is Jupiter. We have the same Capricorn rising, but the our ruler is Jupiter. So
In
it's
the
it's
fifth
almost
house.
the same
Wow.
chart, but now the 10th ruler, but our ruler. So if we consider uh, the our ruler and kind of associated with the victor itself, so much of the delineation that we did for Germany is not going to change. But how does the our ruler Jupiter's position, um, you know, indicate these subtle changes
Mm-hmm.
in the current economic or political situation of Argentina? So Jupiter rules the 12th house and the third house.
Mm-hmm.
So two cadent houses, which again goes to the fifth house. So I always think that second house, fifth house, eighth house, and 11th house are the axis for or the angles of money. Second house being your immediate money, fifth house reserves, eighth house whatever help that you get, or recurring income or expenses, whatever it may be, and 11th house gains. So
Mm-hmm.
so Jupiter as the third and the 12th ruler is placed in the fifth house of resources. I mean, existing or I don't think Argentina has reserves, but I think Jupiter just indicates that they are very, very hardly trying to kind of improve their the currency. One thing, obviously, everyone knows the hit that Argentine peso has taken against the dollar, and earlier, I mean, even before the elections, Javier Milei had suggested that he would always make a transition to the US dollar and dump Argentine peso. So it's important to see whether if there is any situation that might give rise to the change in the currency for Argentina. But obviously, it looks like US is not in a position to kind of provide any kind of help, either politically or economically, at this point. As we all know, the condition in the United States. So Argentina's situation is pretty much bleak, at least from my perspective at this point. But I think they have a little bit of, spirit going on to kind of push things forward somehow, because Jupiter is the our ruler, third house is the house of courage.
Yeah, I mean, I did see something recently. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. With regards to the economic the results, let's just say, of
Yeah.
the economic policies that have been implemented so far. And again, it could be that I was just simply reading someone who is a detractor of Millets and therefore wasn't
Yeah.
writing very favorably. But it did seem to, yeah, Argentina's poverty levels hit 57% of the population, a
Oh my God.
20-year high in January, study finds.
The moon answers it all, and
Yeah, it
Mercury,
does.
sorry, Mars also. So,
Yes, I mean, again, opposing each other. We can see that across the second, eighth house axis.
yeah.
Yeah, so I that was a very startling statistic, I thought, and I thought it would be worth sharing.
Yeah, and one more thing is, I think it's also important to note the trade. Let's take Mercury. Obviously, Mercury is the trade and
Yep.
commerce. So Mercury is placed with Rahu. So naturally, they are trying to amplify the trade that they can do. But one blunder that Javier Milei did, if I mean, I've not followed anything recently, but as soon as he got in, I think Javier Milei suggested that he was not going to join the BRICS, which was probably known much before itself. But I think by doing so, he directly kind of created this, maybe not directly, but indirectly created this confrontation with China. And China is probably not in a very, very good mood to continue their FDIs in Argentina, because China has been investing a lot in Argentina. I think, which kind of is really questionable, at least at this point. But I think they're making some efforts to amplify, because Rahu's amplification. So Mercury, um, that rules the sixth and the ninth house, is kind of, although sixth house doesn't indicate any kind of progress, but ninth house, with the MC in the ninth house, I think they're trying to kind of get the diplomacy going, at some stage, if not immediately, because even now we have cardinal chart, so situation changes very quickly.
Changing again. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it holds good just for 3 months.
6 months.
Oh,
Is it three
cardinal.
months?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
cardinal.
cardinal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mutable charts are 6 months and
Yes,
cardinal
yes.
charts are three. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another challenge that we see. But moon, I think it's indicative of the burden that people are having. Moon in a fire sign, uh maybe, a level of agitation that people are not finding enough, after kind of hoping for a revolutionary change
Mm.
in the Argentine politics. But I remember looking at the Ingress, Libra Ingress of last year. I did see some important changes in Argentina's chart, especially in terms of king. And I also see here that the king is very strong, despite it is cadent and placed with Saturn. So maybe it indicates grid, but there is a decline. Maybe there is a decline from the place where he started last year. And maybe we will have some kind of a new answer in another 3 months. So instead of looking at the chart now, let's keep the suspense going.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sounds like a plan. I
yeah,
agree.
yeah. Do you want to talk about something, Jolly? I think we have a lot of fortune in the eighth house, not still yet
Well,
into the.
yeah, and I was just thinking, going back to what you were saying earlier about how, the moon in the eighth is speaking to the burdens of the people, the burdens that they're carrying. And I think it's interesting that this time we find a lot of fortune, at the moon's at one end, and a lot of
Yeah,
fortune is at the tail end, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's again almost speaking to this sense of heaviness. Um,
Mm.
again, perhaps this, Leo is a hot and dry sign, and the moon needs moisture.
Yeah.
And so I imagine that the part of fortune, or a lot of fortune, is also, equally not. I mean, you could argue that the ruler of the lot of fortune is that exalted sun on the cusp of the fourth house. So, maybe it feels like, again, it feels like there's this, as you would expect from a lot of fortune, this kind of up and down, touch and go situation as
Yeah.
to whether or not things improve. They're trying to make things improve.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's on the cusp of the ninth house, which is obviously, I would have thought, on a certain level, the magistrates and the judges and the laws within the country that are in flux and changing,
Mm.
mutable sign, but
Yeah.
then also this idea of overseas supporters and benefactors, right?
Right. That's a very good point that you noticed. And yeah, I knew that something would come out of you with a lot of fortune in the eighth house. So that's the reason why I put it. But another important thing that I kind of found here is that given the fact that poverty is 57%, which is a very recent statistics, and
Very, yeah.
yeah, so like Mercury is in the fourth house, the
Mm.
ninth ruler in the fourth house, and Rahu is in the fourth house. So, does it also mean that people will try to kind of immigrate to other countries, given the fact that
Oh.
Jupiter is the hour ruler, which is the 12th ruler, basically? So, succeedent, Jupiter is succeedent. So, maybe they're trying to look at some other place as home or
Oh, the moon
something.
moon is succeeding, right? Sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
moon,
no,
Jupiter as
Jupiter's
well.
also succeeding. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry. That's a really good point, Ashwin. That's a really good point. I mean, yeah, there's some
Yeah.
type of, potentially emigration that's going on as well, while, people saying, Look, you do the changes you need to make. I can't be here while you do it, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. But I also like the fact that MC and Jupiter. I mean, Jupiter is aspecting MC. It's a trine aspect, so uh,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
is a positive sign. And I would like to take MC as the direction of the nation itself in this case.
Right.
So and maybe indicative of king as well. So s- see this another lineup opens up like a very very different thing here because we have instructions in medieval texts to also look at the ruler of the MC to understand the condition of the king, and it happens to be Mercury. Mercury is in its own terms in the bounds of Mercury itself with Rahu. So the situation is changing for sure.
But I would say that, despite statistics and whatnot, Malay for now is quite secure, isn't he?
Yeah, no,
He's,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah, there's no his detractors will continue to question him and
yeah.
his policy moves, but the fact remains that he is newly elected and will continue to make changes within Argentina.
And Rahu is unorthodox, right? So
Yes, yeah.
King Mercury, Rahu unorthodox king. So I think we have to give him some time and wait. I mean, it's also important to understand the needs of the stomach of Argentinian people. But I think with time, I really feel like Argentina is going forward and probably gaining its own glory that was very very evident before
Well,
30,
I was
40
going to say
years.
with the sorry to interrupt, Ashwin,
No
but I was
problem.
going to
I'm
say
done. Yeah.
earlier, with the MC being trined by Jupiter,
Jupiter. Yeah.
if the MC is also seen as a point of visibility for the
Yes.
country and Jupiter's expansion, we see Argentina coming on to perhaps the world stage more and more. I mean, it is interesting that Milei turned down joining BRICS, but maybe that, I don't know. Maybe does he make a South American version of that? I don't know.
No,
So
I think probably they'll find a way without China itself. So because we should see that Saturn is also opposing MC. Uh,
True. Yes. Good
right,
point.
but Jupiter is also, on the one hand it shows filtering, and on the other hand it shows expansion. So maybe they'll find out and try to be picky and choosy about with whom they want to develop a relationship. But I
Virgo.
think one constant that they would not change is to kind of go behind the United States of America, despite the fact that US is already very, very tensed and not in a position, especially with elections coming up. I don't
Yeah.
think but I think somewhere Argentina is going to gain a lot of help from foreign countries
Yeah.
because of the MC. So yeah, uh, like maybe we can move to next, or did we have
Yeah.
something? Okay, yeah. Uh,
Your turn to pick because I picked the last one.
yeah. Okay, United Kingdom. Oh, why does it not come?
There it is.
So there we go. So the MC has shifted to Scorpio.
Yeah, and but still a Capricorn rising, which
Rising,
is
but
so interesting.
Jupiter's
Yeah.
terms, and our ruler is Mars. So our ruler is Mars. Um, so again, Mars is in the second house. Obviously, we know the state of British economy. It's very, very unfortunate to see British economy to kind of be in such continuous derailment. Um, with Mars in the second house, it just indicates that the situation is not going to change, at least for any, like, the 3 months. So, and I think the the economic report of UK just came, and I think they tanked by minus some 1%. I don't exactly remember, but the growth rate was negative, uh,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is unfortunate. So that's one thing. And and the ruler of the MC, Mars, is placed in the second house. Um, so let's, I mean, 10th house ruler is Venus, but we can also talk about Mars, considering it as the condition of the king, also because Mars is the ruler of the MC.
MC and also the exaltation ruler of the ascendant. So
Yeah,
there's and that for me fits because so much of the attention, particularly with the budget that was just announced by the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, so much focus now is on the economics of the UK. What is happening for the average person. Jeremy Hunt cut the NI, the national insurance rate, by
yeah,
I think it was something like 2p um and per pound, and so this, it was really interesting because a lot of the reaction that I saw was the average person saying, listen, stop cutting services. I would much rather have an ambulance turn up on time than have a 2p tax cut, and what was, I think, overlooked by much of the media was the fact that Jeremy Hunt froze the wage rate for taxes instead of allowing them to rise with inflation. So, in a sense, people will be paying more tax. And that's something that the average person is not happy about. But I mean, we can see
absolutely.
that the conservatives, in terms of their likability factor, if you will, in terms of people voting for them, they continue to decline those numbers. And I think the last number I saw was something like 18%.
Ah,
Very, very low. So yeah,
yeah.
the conservatives are not looking well.
So in so taking up from the tax point of view, again we come to this money portion, where 12th house is the house of tax and Jupiter is in the fifth house. And
Mhm.
again we see the square between Jupiter and the moon, where it's very, very obvious that burden of paying tax, it kind of shows up.
Shows
um,
up, yeah.
Yeah, and I also kind of have this sense that the ruler of the second house, Saturn, going into the third house of decline, and Mars in the second house, the inflation. So the consumables, the rate of the consumables that people need on a daily basis for their regular life is kind of, you know, it's it's very badly growing with Mars in the second house. So that is something that I wanted to point out. Um, and I
It was a,
realized this when I was in England because someone told me that the I mean a coffee, an ordinary coffee, would charge around 3.2 pounds, but I found that it was 4.5, and somewhere it was 5 as well. So I can see that I was not prepared. So uh, so
yeah, it's not a pretty situation. And in fact, the chancellor was hoping to roll out this spring budget that was going to be incredible and woo all these conservative voters back. And he was counting on the fact that it looked like inflation was falling.
yeah,
And then the figures came out in January,
right,
end of January, and he had to go back and very quickly revise everything
right,
because it was showing, as you pointed out, that the British economy was in fact shrinking. It wasn't growing. So
yeah,
there is a real issue there for sure. And again, I look at the lot of fortune being ruled by that Mercury
Mercury.
in the fourth house. Yes, with the North Node, but it speaks to, I think, perhaps the discernment that
Mm,
is going on within the home, within the people of the UK with regards to what's next. I mean, one thing that I see everywhere is a call for the next general election. Now, the Conservatives have until the end of January 2025, but
right.
people want them to call the election much sooner.
So
So,
I think then in that case we have to talk about like the king. So Venus is third, declining with Saturn in mutual reception with the 12th ruler Jupiter, and Mars, the alternate ruler of the king, which rules the MC, is in the second house, and Mars rules the fourth and the 11th house. So in the second house, I don't see that as a very positive situation. So there is
yeah.
this kind of very apparent decline that we can see in the chart as well.
Yes, I agree. Unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know which. Yeah, let's see. Oh, like maybe how many more we have, Jolly? Maybe Russia after this, and just wrap up, or did you have any France or something like that?
Um, yeah, I mean, the only other one I was thinking about was, but I mean, France isn't going to be that
Yeah.
wildly different from Germany, really. They're both in the
Yes.
same bucket, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's up to you if we have enough time
I
to
think
have a quick look.
yeah, I don't know. This is wildly different. If you see Ukraine, Mars in the first house,
Yeah, look at that.
uh,
Wow, Mars, the astrology is
Mars, a
astrologizing.
friend.
Mars
Yeah,
is conjunct the ascendant.
yes,
Wow. Wow.
and Mars rules. Like it's very. I don't know what to make of. Like so, our ruler Victor. So let's go step by step. Our ruler is Victor, and sorry, Jupiter is Victor, and it also rules the 10th house, and
Yes.
our
And the
ruler
MC, yes.
is
Oh, sorry.
Venus. Yeah,
Rules
yeah,
the
rules the MC.
11th house, but the MC,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, the 11th house. Sorry. Yeah, it's easy to miss. The
No, I
Venus
know,
a
I know.
little, it's a little different. So Mars rules the 10th house and Mars is placed in the first house, which is very, very interesting because the 10th ruler in the first house indicates some form of strength of the king. Uh, but we also don't want to have Mars in the first house, which can mean the, destruction to home, or something like that. And Jupiter is Victor, and we see Jupiter in the 10th house, which is very, very good to see, like Jupiter in its own terms in the fourth house of the domestic well-being of the people. So maybe there is some kind of unexpected relief that Ukrainian people will get at this point. I don't know, because Jupiter rules the second house in the 11th house, Jolly. So it indicates money, and Jupiter is placed in the fourth house. So uh, it's very easy for us to kind of delineate saying that there is going to be some form of inflow of money.
I definitely see the inflow of money. However, with the moon in the
Seventh
seventh
house.
house of enemies,
Yeah.
I don't know, Ashwin. I mean, that could potentially be, yes, that the government is receiving the money, but I'm not so sure that the
It might go to the
people
people.
are. Yeah.
Yeah. On the other hand, if you look at seventh house, which indicates enemy, uh, sun is kind of shaky.
Yeah, sun is entering ingressing into a cadent house. So
Yeah.
for me, this is really showing that the people are hurting. I don't
Yeah.
again, I could be wrong, but that doesn't there's a weird not synchronicity, but happening simultaneously. On one level, the king is doing well, the government is receiving this influx of support, and certainly, for example, Macron the other day, last week, I think,
Yeah.
was floated the idea of
NATO
NATO.
entering Ukraine.
Yeah, which again, Dominique Villeneuve, the former French prime minister, apparently just cut Macron down to size. He was not happy with that suggestion whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um, but just going on the basis of this chart, it looks like the government, the king, receives a lot of support whilst the people are potentially languishing.
Yeah, on the other hand, one more important thing which kind of sun tells me from the chart is
Mm,
because seventh house is indicative of opposition. So somehow Russia's position is changing, or they're thinking about a change in the position, although it doesn't immediately indicate that a change is likely, given the fact that tensions are growing
mm.
after Macron's statement, and also, I mean, Sweden's.
Sweden's recent
Yeah,
entry. Yeah.
into NATO.
Yeah.
So yeah, so obviously Russia is fired up, but I kind of get a sense that their situation might be changing a little bit given the fact that Moon is there in the seventh house. So some kind of warmth within the fire, like uh,
Maybe. I mean, I keep reading reports, although it seems to cut both ways. I keep reading reports that talk about Putin, floating the idea of a ceasefire.
yes,
And as recently as the third or fourth week of February, there was literally this back-to-back Reuters report that said that Putin had put forward the idea of a ceasefire that was rejected by the US.
yeah,
And then the following day, the Reuters report said that Russian spokespeople were saying, no, 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 no. Putin never put forward an idea of a ceasefire. Maybe that was just to make him look less weak. I don't, not weak, but you know what I mean? Like
yeah, yeah,
he put forward an idea, proposal that was then
yeah,
shot down. But there's definitely, we've entered, we're past now the 2-year anniversary of this war.
yes,
And I think people are very, very aware that with the fighting that's also going on in the Middle East, and
yeah,
how, there is there's jeopardy in terms of that conflict escalating.
yes, yes,
People are really tiring of, the appetite for war is starting to wane.
yeah. Yeah, it is very, very visible because second house shows immediate concerns of people. So Venus is there exalted. So I mean, people want it like some kind of, and Saturn is there. So they're the distress and all these things comes up. Moon in the seventh house, fire sign shows another, indication of distress and agony
Yeah.
because of the war. But I think I would have not, I mean, I would have been happier if Mars was not in the first house. And given the fact that this is a fixed rising, um, you know,
Hmm. It's
which
good
is
for the
valid
year,
for the
right?
year. So maybe the
Yeah.
tensions are going to be there for the entire year. Um, yeah, we have to wait and watch. But I think, apart from Mars in the first house, I think we don't have strong suggestions that war might end, but we have enough suggestions to believe that the opposition is waning a little bit with the idea of continuing the war.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless and until like Ukraine gets any further weapons, so I don't think there is any possibility, practical possibility for the war to continue without support.
Yes.
And
And that's
United
what everyone
States,
keeps saying.
yeah,
Again, oh gosh, it's so hard. We do have, the whole sign opposition between the moon and Mars. Moon, as you pointed out, is fast moving. The next aspect it makes is to Jupiter,
yeah.
right? So yeah, I'm not really sure. To me, having Mars in that first house can indicate a warlike posture.
Sure.
It could also be a very defensive posture.
Oh,
And with
yeah.
Saturn in the second house, Saturn, I think, is actually, because of the 14 minutes, I think Saturn is in the terms of Jupiter. I believe
Uh,
Saturn is in the terms of Jupiter, believe it or not. I could be wrong, but
Saturn is in the terms of Jupiter. Yes, that's true.
right. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting from that perspective because it is the ascendant ruler
So
that, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, I was not going to say anything.
Oh, just, because it's the ascendant ruler and in the terms of Jupiter, I don't know. It feels like, as if Zelensky is going to continue pushing for more, 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 more.
Yeah, yeah, because Mars is there in the first house. So
Yeah.
yeah, and by 12th parts as well, Mars is in the first house. So I just wanted to kind of check up the 12th parts to see if there is any conformity. Uh, yeah, it is. It looks like the situation is not going to kind of die down anytime soon
Yeah.
because of the fact that we also have a fixed rising. So yeah, maybe the 10th ruler Zelensky is pushing forward with aggression, a
He
newfound
certainly
aggression.
doesn't seem to be in short supply of it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I think uh, I don't know if we have to look at Russia.
yeah,
Uh,
let's look at Russia actually. I mean,
uh,
again, it's probably not going to be massively different, but it would be good to just have a peek.
yes. Yeah, let's just give a quick shot at Russia's. Oh, it's a major
Oh,
shift.
see?
It's a
That's
major shift.
wow. That is really, I'm glad we did look. I'm glad we did look.
Yeah. Okay. And this is not very different from Israel. And, you know, it's not very different from Israel. We have Pisces rising, the mutual reception between Jupiter and the first ruler and the eighth ruler, obviously. Saturn. Here we see a different picture uh, as opposed to what we kind of saw in Ukraine's chart. So
Yeah.
it looks like Russia is going for the kill from here because the eighth ruler is in the first house and Saturn indicates determination. But Saturn is peregrine. So I think some form of weakness will creep in that that other, the opposing parties might capitalize upon.
Well, I'm also thinking that, seeing that Venus there, maybe ugh, could it be that there are overtures of diplomacy coming from
Yes.
Russia, but then I worry that with that conjunction to Saturn, they
The
are in
foreign
fact
powers.
deceptive overtures, which is what people are warning against. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, a very interesting chart to look at back to back with the
Ukraine.
Ukrainian chart for sure. I mean, you also have that Mars in the 12th, so it's almost like this, the hidden enemy. We're storing up. We've got more where it came from. I don't know. It's really interesting, right? And then you continue to have the moon, the people in the 6th house. I mean, I think the protests against the war within Russia continue to,
Yeah.
I won't say grow, but they are continuing. And that's, obviously not been a great situation for the Russian people.
Yeah.
I can see that the day ruler is Mercury, and that's the 4th house ruler as well. So,
Yeah. It's not a very uh nice situation as well, even for Russia. But
no, it
yeah,
isn't.
and it looks like there might be a little bit of a derailment, not derailment, but a slump in Russian economy. Uh, and they might be overspending for war. Second ruler in the 12th house. They might be overspending on war and weapons. So obviously they're taking so much from Iran, and yeah,
Yeah.
and probably China and North Korea are also. I mean, I think North Korea has already given some. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
very good
it's
point. That's a very good point. Mm.
yeah, and Saturn is the ruler of the 12th house, Jolly. So maybe with Venus here, Russia is trying to extend diplomacy, but some foreign powers are trying to kind of cut that down or trying to kind of take that out of the
Block
table.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
be an obstacle to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, interestingly, one of the things that the former French prime minister was saying on French national TV was that he felt France and the rest of the EU and the other Western nations hadn't done enough to isolate Russia diplomatically. So he was very critical of Macron's idea, floating the idea of NATO slash French boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And he was saying this is a failure of diplomacy. So yeah, I think that speaks to
Yes.
Russia being rebuffed. And you could
Yeah.
absolutely see that as that Venus Saturn conjunction with
Yes.
Saturn being the 12th house ruler. That makes a lot of sense actually.
Yeah. So the condition of the people is obviously not good with the moon in the 6th house. So
Mm-mm.
yeah,
Mm-mm.
no, like yeah, uh, it's interesting. Jupiter rules the MC, and anyway, it doesn't change much as far as the condition of the king goes. Uh, you know, the mutual reception. Putin is already given a victory. There is no opposition, obviously. So yeah, so nothing much to discuss about the condition of the king because we know that it's not changing. And I think I want to kind of look at Canada because last year was a very, very uh, troublesome year for Canada, and I want to see
Yes.
what's going on in Canada. Oh, Scorpio rising. Would you believe that?
That's wow. Look at that. That's
Yeah, the people are kind of waiting to see someone else. And Johnny, 4th house is the house of domestic well-being and houses. So it's amazing. Like Mars in the 4th house. straight away indicates, the challenges in the housing industry.
Yep, yep. And just general unrest within the population, I would have said.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And moon in the 10th house again indicates that people need primary attention, because the moon is approaching the MC in the 10th house angular. Obviously, the tension of the people against the government is growing. I think this is almost similar chart like the US, not
The US
much.
chart, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, but I don't see the condition changing anyway. So one more important thing that I wanted to point out is like so many foreign nationals who had settled or immigrated to Canada are currently leaving. So that is, and maybe Mars also indicates that like people leaving out of the country, and
Separating out. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, they're looking for some other place. So succeedent is kind of indicative of trying to search and uh, move or whatever it may be. So I think that is one of
Hmm.
those important things that we can see here. And Canada, I mean, I don't know what to say, but they're not making a very you know uh, splendorous figure on a global platform with their prime minister. Uh, Kind of, it's a very sad scenario anyway.
Well, and you could say, insofar as again the sun represents Trudeau, for example,
Yes.
the sun's ingressing into a cadent house. It's,
Yeah. Not a
he
good sign.
he has been, I think, in a
Decline.
period of decline over these last 2+
Three
years.
years, maybe
So
even 3 years, but yeah,
yeah,
especially
I
from the
think
last
almost
year.
3 years.
But
Yeah.
especially in the last year, it's so sad
It's
that
accelerated
yes,
without a
exactly.
doubt. Without a
Yeah.
doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. I think we paid good attention to some of those important places like that we should like did you have anything else in mind, Jolly, like any other place?
No,
No.
no. This was a lot of fun, Ashwin. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really
So
appreciate
yeah,
it.
we spent some time with some major countries, starting with the United States, obviously with the elections coming up, and
Hmm.
then Gaza and Ukraine. I think we spent good time with Gaza and Ukraine, which was very important. So yeah, I think this was fun, and maybe we can just try and do a little more regularly.
I would love that. I really would.
Thanks, Charlie.